Greetings. Thank you for joining our webinar, Mental Health Strategies in Action, Strategies to Provide Information to Families about the Foundations of Early Childhood Mental Health. My name is Erica Kelly with the National Center on Early Childhood Quality Assurance. Going forward, you will hear me refer to our center using the acronyms NCECQA. This webinar will be recorded, and within a few weeks, it will be posted on the NCECQA website along with the slides. Please use the chat to share comments and any questions you have. We will not be answering questions live. Any policy questions you have, we will share with the Office of Child Care. We will also share our contact information so you can connect with us following the webinar. Now let's proceed to review today's agenda. In today's webinar, my colleague Lisa Matter from the Child Care State Capacity Building Centers, Infant Toddler Specialist Network, and I will delve deeper into the Office of Child Care's recent information memorandum titled Strategies and Recommendations for Using the Child Care and Development Fund to Enhance the Mental Health and Well-Being of Children, Families, and Child Care Providers. Going forward, you will hear me refer to this as the IM. Special emphasis will be placed on Strategy 1 and its corresponding example activities. As we progress through our presentation, we will provide a more in-depth overview of the topics listed on the agenda and explain the driving factors that influence the development of the content. Now let's review how you can access the IM. If you would like to follow along as we discuss Strategy 1 and its example activities, here is the QR code to access the IM. We'll now examine the IM framework. The recommendations in the IM are organized to span the array of services and supports that make up a comprehensive mental health system of care and focus specifically on the actions that CCDF lead agencies can take to support the needs of young children, their families, and the child care workforce. The recommendations for supporting mental health within child care settings are laid out in this framework. Mental health promotion, prevention and family strengthening services and supports, and access to behavioral health treatment. Now let's explore a visual representation of the IM. This visual is a depiction of the IM. As you explore the IM, you'll notice it's divided into 3 framework elements. Each contains strategies and specific activities. This visual representation is designed to correspond with the table of contents on page 5 and integrate example activities which become more apparent as you explore the IM in depth. If you're a neurodivergent visual learner like me, using charts and diagrams can significantly boost engagement and comprehension of complex material. Let's now review the data analytics from our previous webinar, which has informed today's content. I'm pleased to share the data analytics from our May 30th Mental Health Strategies in Action webinar. Feedback from CCDF lead agencies indicated strong interest in strategies 1 through 4 associated with the IM element, mental health promotion. This feedback has informed the framework for today's session. You'll notice that strategies 3 and 4 were the most favored. Since strategy 1 is a precursor to these, we are concentrating on that strategy today. In our upcoming technical assistance offerings, we will delve into the remaining strategies. Upcoming learning opportunities will be designed to be more engaging and collaborative, allowing for two-way communication and a closer connection with participants. At the end of today's webinar, we'll conduct a poll to determine which of the strategies 2 through 4 to focus on next. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the specifics of today's agenda. So now that you have a clear understanding of the IM structure and purpose, let's delve into what you'll hear today during today's webinar. Today, we will provide the following: an overview of Strategy 1 and its corresponding example activities, the importance of Strategy 1 and its corresponding example activities, state and participant mental health strategy and action examples, mental health strategy and action resources. Now, throughout our presentation, we will introduce a variety of resource links. There's no need to jot them all down, as we've prepared concluding slides that consolidate every link that we will discuss. Plus, we'll distribute a PDF of the slide deck, so you'll have access to all the links at your convenience. And now I'm going to turn it over to Lisa to kick us off with an overview of Strategy 1 and a look into the first example activity under Strategy 1.
Thank you, Erica. Childcare staff play an important role in promoting early childhood mental health, in part through supporting parents' understanding of children's social and emotional development, and in part through communicating that adult caregivers need to attend to their own mental health in order to promote the wellness of the young children in their care. Quality frameworks, consumer education websites, early learning guidelines can all serve as access pathways for providing mental health promotion information to families. As shown on this slide, Strategy 1 is provide information to families about children's social and emotional development, parental well-being, and the importance of early caregiving relationships. The three kinds of information listed in this strategy might sound familiar to you: development, well-being, relationships. These categories of information reflect a long-standing definition of infant and early childhood mental health. The developing capacity of the infant and young child to form close and secure relationships, to experience, manage, and express a full range of emotions, to explore the environment and learn, all in the context of community, family, and culture. So it's not surprising that the first strategy under increased mental health promotion seems to mirror this common definition of early childhood mental health. While that last part isn't explicitly noted in the mental health promotion element 1, it's important to remember social emotional development, like all development, happens in the context of family, community, and culture. Let's now look closer at the example activities that Child Care and Development Fund lead agencies can consider. There are 4 example activities provided in the IM under Strategy 1. As Erica noted, this is a visual map of where we are on the first example activity designed to increase mental health promotion. We're about to look at this activity more closely. So the first example activity is to increase access to information about social and emotional milestones and strategies for identifying and responding to developmental and behavioral concerns. This means the activity is centered on providing parents with culturally relevant mental health information of 2 types. One part focusing on typical development, the other part addressing adult responses to child behavior. Why is information about both social and emotional milestones and responsive adult strategies important? There is a wide range of typical behavior in early childhood. Without knowledge of what typical development looks like, it can be hard to identify when a child's behavior may reflect a need for an additional support across any developmental domain. Childcare providers are skilled at recognizing and anticipating typical behaviors, even those behaviors that challenge their adults. And children grow up in their childcare settings and in their families and in community settings. So it's important for parents, as well as all caregivers, to have access to information that helps them recognize and anticipate social emotional milestones, just as they would those observable physical milestones like taking first steps, saying first words. Likewise, knowing how to respond effectively and appropriately to a variety of child behaviors is equally important. Every adult who cares for a child plays a role in their well-being and their development through those responsive interactions. Child and adult behaviors can vary based on family, community, and cultural backgrounds. And we'll talk a little more about aligning mental health promotion strategies for cultural congruence and supporting programs and identifying culturally and linguistically appropriate materials when we address the third example activity. But to increase access to information about social emotional development and responsive caregiving, the IM suggests using free resources and collaborating with agencies and organizations that share similar goals, which might include leveraging support from ambassadors. For instance, lead agencies can partner with the state's Learn the Signs Act Early Ambassador to disseminate materials and training opportunities for childcare providers across settings. That's just one example. Next, we'd like to hear from you. Using the chat, we invite you to respond to this question. Now, as I saw many of you putting your names in here, we have many jurisdictions, large and small, states, territories, and tribes represented. What resources are available in your state, your territory, your tribe that describe child development or provide guidance on interacting with children? We'll pause and see. This is your chance to share what you are already doing well, what materials are already accessible in your community. You might think about we mentioned earlier quality frameworks, consumer education websites that might describe to a parent what to look for in a childcare setting. I see a couple of them coming in. QRIS. We partner with Help Me Grow. We use the pyramid model. Arizona shares, we have a statewide early childhood mental health consultation. So there's some people, warm bodies, who are able to connect parents with that information. Now they're really rolling in and they're going so fast. So Erica, I'm looking to you to see if one has jumped out.
I see lots of CDC developmental milestones, early stages. I've seen that a few times, ages and stages, social and emotional development guide in Texas.
I'm seeing the CDC milestones and really excited to see that. We're gonna talk about that again a little bit later this afternoon. CDC milestones are free and accessible resources. Ages and stages, again, you notice that as well. Our Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Agency is an agency that's helping parents connect to information about child development and about how to respond.
The pyramid model, I think that's one that's frequently referred to and used often. I know we're all familiar with that one.
Some information I see from New York State, a core body of knowledge and early learning guidelines. Information that all states, territories, and tribes are invited to have. Doesn't tell you exactly how they need to be, but those can be places where typical development is described that can be made accessible to all families. Those early learning guidelines giving the description of development, a set of standards for caregivers may describe some of those typical behaviors that we want adults to be able to use in response to child behavior. I see so many partners. Here's a partner. A child advocacy center provides great information on trauma-informed practices in Arizona, and we also use resources from the Harvard Center on the Developing Child. Places where there are resources that are trusted in your community are great places to go and say, do they have information about child development here that I could share with families, that I could share with providers so they could share with families? These are coming in so fast.
Nevada. I'm definitely pleased to see that one. And hi, Jennifer. Nevada was our first state that was highlighted in our mental health exemplar profile series. And if you haven't checked that out, you'll want to do that. We'll provide the link later in the chat, but you definitely want to learn more about their early childhood health worker program and how they integrate parent engagement and ages and stages, CDC milestones. So great. That's good to see there.
Thank you. Heather also highlights QRS, Quality Counts in California, provides information to families. All About Young Children is a website in California to provide information to families on typical development. And she's also noted partnering with the Learn the Signs Act Early and other agencies to lead. It sounds like you've built an event, parent cafes, to provide parents with a forum to discuss. I also see a nice connection across the mixed delivery system here. Martha highlights we use the ECLKC, and that is an acronym that stands for the Early Childhood Knowledge and Learning Center, where there's information both for providers and families about child development and responsive strategies. Wonderful. I see these slowing down, and which doesn't mean you have to stop. But we see them slowing down, and I want to just challenge you to consider how might you increase the availability of those already available materials in your community, in your state, in your territory, in your tribe, with one particular childcare provider. How might you make those available to providers and families without overwhelming them? There can be a lot of information out there. What do you know about channels where families are accessing information? Are they looking to social media? Are they looking to have that conversation? Many of you have noted the people who are making that connection with that information, sort of people being the flow and the process of information. You might be getting information into the hands of the infant and early childhood mental health consultant or your pyramid model coach, and they might be getting information into the hands of parents and providers.
And Lisa,
yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to highlight Donna Minster's County Councils for Young Children in New Jersey. New Jersey, of course, is near and dear to my heart, and the county councils were such an effective way in terms of having feedback loops to find out what the parents' concerns were and issues were, and being able to explicitly describe their needs, and then being able to get that information back to the state level council, which had the feedback loop to our state leadership and then directly to the governor's office. So absolutely.
Wonderful. Exactly. With information, we can make the best choices about every aspect of our child's care and the support and help that we get too as adults. I love that. And you're getting a yay. So thank you again for sharing these strengths and these ideas with other states, territories, and tribes who might consider using these to increase access to information. We too have a few more resources for you to consider. As you consider any next steps or continuing the good work that you're already doing, we'd highlight and encourage you to explore some of the free resources that are connected to the Mental Health Information Memorandum, the IM. We've already mentioned, and it's been mentioned in the chat, the Learn the Signs Act Early campaign and ambassadors as valuable, accessible resources. Additionally, there are more resources linked in the IM that provide information relevant to families. They are dropped here in the chat for you that cover both milestones and effective caregiving practices. And we have, as mentioned, they're in the chat. You can collect them, but you'll also find them in the IM on pages 6 and 16. And finally, they'll be in the concluding slides of our presentation. And we'll take a look at just one of these resources designed to provide information on how to respond to child behaviors. So the Essentials for Parenting Toddlers and Preschoolers is a free online resource developed by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, that's been mentioned in the chat as a partner as well. It's specifically designed for parents of 2 to 4-year-olds. This resource provides concise examples of typical child behaviors, as well as offering effective ways to respond to those behaviors. Additionally, it includes tips and tools for parents to learn about broadly effective parenting strategies. All parents want to do well by their children, and increasing access to information about how to do well helps them be the parents they want to be. Sometimes, however, there are additional barriers to seeking out information and support related to mental health and well-being. I'm going to pass it back to Erica to address the next example activity that discusses some of these barriers.
Thank you, Lisa. Let's continue on to our next example activity, raise awareness and reduce stigma. This example activity focuses on collaborating with organizations that offer training and materials. Their goal is to normalize conversations about mental health, reduce stigma related to seeking help for mental health or substance abuse, and to help caregivers understand how prioritizing their own mental health contributes to the well being of young children in their care. So, why is this important? Mental health and well being extend beyond individual experiences. They are deeply intertwined with relationships, connections, and interactions. This holds especially true for infants and toddlers whose well being, often referred to as relational health, hinges on the quality of their relationships with caregivers. When adults grapple with their own mental health challenges, it can impact the children under their care. Conversely, when caregivers feel comfortable seeking and accepting support, the children thrive. Moreover, our language matters when discussing the well being of children, families, and the workforce. While the term mental health sometimes carries stigma, the overarching goal remains consistent to enhance outcomes. By reducing stigma, we empower families and children to seek resources without fear of judgment, fostering healthier, more resilient communities. Now, what does this example look like in action? An example of a state, territory, and tribal initiatives that align with the goal of normalizing conversations about mental health, reducing stigma, and supporting caregivers is Help Me Grow. States implementing this initiative emphasize social emotional screening and provide free access to early care and education programs statewide. Help Me Grow places a strong emphasis on social emotional screening, making it a routine part of children's health care. By doing so, it normalizes discussions about mental health. The initiative also trains providers in developmental screening and assists families when concerns are identified. When issues arise, Help Me Grow helps families connect with community resources. This not only supports caregivers' mental health, but also enhances the well being of young children in their care. Now I'm going to turn it over to the audience. We would love to hear from you. Could you please share in the chat what your state, territory, or tribe is doing to enhance access, raise awareness, and reduce stigma?
And Erica, as they are typing those ideas in there, I want to highlight something that Jacob said. Language is
Yes,
so important. The way we talk about things and ourselves is so important, especially around kids. And I think that's such a nice example of how each one of us has the power to reduce stigma just by showing up and being who we are. When we say, Whew, I was really stressed out, so I took a break. I was really stressed out, so I talked to my friend. We are being part of that system of reducing stigma by talking about what's going on in our mental state.
absolutely. And considering your state's data, are there specific caregiving adult demographics that need more support but are hesitant to ask to seek it due to stigma? How successful are your strategies that your state is using to combat stigma? And who are you collaborating with in these efforts?
Here's another one I love that came in. A Children's Mental Health Week has the goal of reducing stigma and normalizing conversations. And they even, Georgia shared a link there with you all to check out.
I love
Lakeisha
this.
says
Oh,
constant training. Sorry, go
training. No, I was just going to say, I love this one about inclusive classrooms and social and emotional lessons, such as Second Step. I know a lot of times when we'll talk about mental health and stigma, some things that we sometimes shy away from speaking about are things like neurodivergent learners. I identified that. I talked about it in the beginning. And again, when we talk about these inclusive practices and even inclusive practices in the workforce, it's just important to
Mhm.
have these conversations and to normalize it. And it's okay. It just means that you may approach things a little bit differently. And when we start young, we want to start using this language and making sure that, again, when we are in the classrooms, they're inclusive and letting children know that it's okay. You may just approach this a little bit differently. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you.
Yeah. Exactly. And inside of some of those curriculums are processes for children to talk about their own internal state.
Mhm.
I was mad. When we talk about feelings, we're talking about our state, and then other children get to know. We get to practice, and we have a second step is the puppy, I think. We get to practice with the puppy, see an example of how we might respond if someone has a, a big feeling that's coming across in our classroom.
And I love, Lisa, that you refer to it as a big feeling and not a negative feeling, because all of our emotions, they're not negative. They're emotions that we all have. The important part is, how do we respond with our emotions and giving healthy outlets and ways to express our emotions.
That's right. That's right. And I wanted to connect, Lakeisha said constant trainings, and Donna
Mhm.
followed up with providing a training one time per month called Revive and Thrive. And I highlight this because just having a training space that has this topic, mental health or early relational health or children's mental health or big feelings, um, is part of reducing the stigma that we have training about it. We all have room to learn. I love how she said it helps them let their hair down. So it really is that parallel process of experiencing care for ourselves.
Beatrice talks about our employer, the Children's Cabinet, is an amazing resource that is shared throughout the cabinet to help the families navigate the resources in the community. And is this Nevada again? If not, it sounds very similar to their community health worker initiative. So that's fantastic. Yes, I recognize that.
Ooh, Jacob brings up a really good point. A lot of our work revolves around nutrition and physical activity. We try to subtly highlight how these are interlinked with each other and with mental health outcomes, sharing nutrition or physical activity discussions and activities, but reframing them as self-care opportunities can be beneficial for kids and adults, I would say. I would agree, Jacob, and I think there's a lot of research and evidence that says it, it isn't just your brain when you're talking about mental health. It is about, are you getting access to nature? Are you getting opportunities for your physical body to be active? And we know that stress and trauma can be processed through our body through physical activity. So thank you for highlighting that as well.
And another point, just to expound a little bit with Jacob talking about nutrition, just thinking about all of our families coming from homes where they may have adequate food. Sometimes food insecurity, it's a thing and it's an issue. And so how can we perhaps have partnerships with other organizations that could perhaps provide healthy meals or to just supplement what's happening would be super helpful.
That's right. It loops in together our first um, example activity with our second activity, partnering with those organizations who
Yeah.
have the same goal and figuring out the part that we can contribute. And I love how Minerva highlights just having these conversations in our meetings and keeping the conversations alive is part of how we reduce stigma. It's not a one-time conversation. I also want to note, Ashley says, please make sure if you're sharing something with us to use that blue in the chat and use the drop down to choose everyone. That way we'll all be able to see it, because it sounds like maybe some great things have been shared that we might have missed.
I really appreciate everyone sharing. This is a topic that I could go on and on about. I feel like we could do a separate session on this alone. But here are some additional questions you may want to consider as you implement strategy one in this specific example activity. How can we build upon our existing strengths and opportunities to better support caregivers on their mental health journey, especially concerning infants and toddlers? What are your aspirations for reducing the stigma around mental health and fostering a culture of openness and support? Lastly, what measurable improvements in well-being would you like to see for both caregivers and children as a result of these efforts? So as you consider these questions, if an answer comes to mind quickly, please feel free to share it in the chat. Now let's explore some resources specific to this example activity. The IM suggests resources for CCDF lead agencies to assist childcare providers, including family childcare providers, in accessing informational materials related to maternal health. Let's focus on the first resource, Mom's Mental Health Matters. This resource is from the National Institute of Child and Human Development. Mom's Mental Health Matters campaign provides information about the signs of depression and anxiety during pregnancy or after birth. The campaign encourages mothers to speak openly about their mental health challenges and helps others understand that these conditions are common and treatable, fostering empathy and support. You can obtain free materials in both English and Spanish through this webpage by phone or via email. Additionally, you have the option to download a copy of these materials. The site also provides social media ready graphics that you can download and share. I'm now going to turn it back to Lisa for example 3.
Thank you, Erica. Continuing with the example activities for strategy 1, we've come to example activity 3. And example activity 3 is to include parents, providers, and other community partners from diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds as collaborators in planning, creating, disseminating mental health awareness messages, activities, and resources, including strategies to combat stigma and reach families and childcare providers who may themselves have behavioral health needs. Whew. Additionally, the information memorandum suggests supporting programs and identifying materials that are culturally and linguistically appropriate for the families they serve. And both of those topics, engaging community partners and providing materials as a lead agency, have been discussed in the chat already. So we applaud already your good work that you've shared. But why is it important to include cultural and linguistic diversity in our efforts to increase access to information about development, well-being, and relationships, and to reduce stigma? Humans are inherently cultural beings. Our culture or cultures are learned early through our early caregiving relationships. Research shows us that historical trauma, structural racism, xenophobia, to name a few, can impact the mental health and well-being of caregivers, and therefore the developing children with whom those caregivers have relationships. These challenges can compound the barriers to well-being that may be created by stigma as well, which we all encounter. So to effectively communicate about mental health to any group of people, any individual, it's essential to trust individuals with lived experience. They can determine which messages resonate within their unique communities and how to deliver them effectively. So we've talked about free and accessible resources, but this example activity reminds us that those might not be the right resources. You may need to check with the communities you most want to serve. As we emphasize the importance of all caregiving adults recognizing and anticipating social emotional development and milestones, we also recognize that cultural and linguistic alignment of that information is not negotiable, just like cultural and linguistic experiences are not negotiable for infants and toddlers. They have to have those for their healthy identity development. So supporting providers in sourcing culturally and linguistically appropriate materials increases the chances that all families have the chance to feel understood, supported, and included, inclusive of their full background. And we're going to ask you for an example of what this looks like in action. There aren't explicit examples included in the IM. Where have your state, territory, or tribe, or other smaller jurisdiction engaged in close listening to community in order to inform messaging campaigns about services and supports? I recall that I did see one in the chat about finding materials that are culturally responsive to your community. But I invite you to think about, how have you already, or how does your agency already have approaches or practices that support you in actively listening to community voices that you can apply to your delivery, dissemination, creation of mental health awareness materials? as you've shared in the chat as well, are there partners who you work with who might have guidance, feedback, community voice to elevate and share so that you can make those decisions about how to deliver your materials, where to deliver them, through which channels?
I love this, Lisa, that just this conversation. And again, I think this is important when we talk about language matters, because a lot of times we'll hear things like, oh, well, those are hard to reach, areas. No, they're not hard to reach areas. Sometimes they're underserved. Sometimes they're historically excluded. And so again, what are we doing to be able to reach populations that are culturally diverse, linguistically diverse? And again, one of the ones that comes to mind is Nevada. And I remember they explicitly, when we interviewed them and highlighted them in their profile, talked about how they were so intentional about having their staff go into the communities and being able to make those connections and provide resources.
Exactly. And I want to, Hasina Thomas says, we intentionally hire staff
Yeah.
connected in various communities to build authentic relationships, not just going out to listen to community, but making your agency a place where community members are welcomed and valued. I also love that Jean has asked a question here. And if you don't have something doesn't come right to mind, feel free to ask a question. She says, maybe more languages are needed in terms of materials and resources. And perhaps it might be that right where you are right now is taking data. Who are our culturally and linguistically
Yes.
diverse communities? We might just be finding out who are the recent arrivals we're welcoming? Who are the communities, as Erica mentioned, who've been historically excluded? We might start there with data.
I love this. Jacob says the community members are always the experts. Yes.
Holding that mindset,
Mhm.
exactly. And then playing that out in activities like Christopher mentions, 14 statewide listening sessions held across the state, open to any early childhood program, staff, parents. Networking with programs in the community. Oh, I love hearing this. Sherilyn Fisher says, we partner with the tribe's mental health clinic, a medicine woman, and also having talking circles with families to hear what resources, approaches, awareness they would like to see. Exactly that routine of engaging with our community and listening, and before we make our next steps about what they would like in terms of resources and approaches.
I love Lakeisha also highlighting Nevada's community health worker programs and how it's throughout the state, and they're supporting many areas, even in the rural areas, partnering with many community partners and politicians. It's fantastic.
Being
Jennifer,
able to
yeah.
be physically
Mm-hmm.
co-located.
Mm-hmm. And Jennifer highlights uh, that the community events, they provide materials and trainings in English and in Spanish. And I love this, meeting our clients where they are at and actively listening without judgment so that we can best support them. That's wonderful.
Which can take a long time, which might reflect it's maybe a little bit more challenging to think of what are our specific examples. So again, we might encourage you to think about, are there specific outcomes you might need to write down or you want to achieve in terms of improved cultural sensitivity and support for the families in your jurisdiction? So thank you for your willingness to share these examples with each other and with us. As I noted, there are not specific examples provided in the IM, in part because listening to and centering community voice is essential and it's unique to each community. So it's hard to find an example of this. We would not want to say this is how to do it. So
Mhm.
there's fewer specific resources, but we would like to remind you of two tools you can access to support that bidirectional communication efforts as a CCDF lead agency. The first is the Systems Building Resource Guide. This resource provides a wealth of tools to pinpoint approaches for actively engaging with and listening to diverse community partners as part of your efforts to develop your early childhood systems, including those comprehensive systems of mental health care. Likewise, for engaging community voice around mental health services and other supports, lead agencies could also consider taking a human-centered design approach. The human-centered design toolkit for CCDF lead agencies outlines strategies to keep the people you serve at the center of your work as you design improvements to both service delivery and materials and campaigns that you might be developing. So we have included those links in the chat. And I'm going to, I think, pass now back to Erica, because again, there aren't specific examples for us to share within the IM on example 3.
And I just saw this chat that came in that said we need more interpreters. Absolutely. So when we talk about resources and where are we investing our funds, interpreters, that's a great one. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you, Lisa. Our final example activity under strategy 1 that we will explore today is disseminate adult mental health and well-being resources and materials. That topic dovetails nicely from that last comment in the chat. So all 3 of the example activities that we've discussed during today's webinar consider both children and adults aiming to raise awareness and promote well-being. The final example activity under strategy 1 emphasizes promoting help when it's urgently needed. For instance, normalizing the need for urgent help through helplines reinforces the lifelong importance of connection. Lead agencies should consider actively encouraging childcare programs, including family childcare providers, to share and promote the use of suicide prevention and crisis resources. It's crucial that these resources are culturally and linguistically relevant. And so when we think about why is this important, well, adults often face unique challenges and stressors that can significantly impact their mental health. By providing appropriate resources and support, we can help them effectively manage these difficulties. When adults uphold a positive state of mental health, they are better equipped to offer the essential support needed for children's development. Additionally, normalizing the need for urgent help, such as through helplines, is crucial for promoting mental health. This normalization communicates that seeking help is acceptable and that everyone may require support at some point. Not only does this assist individuals currently struggling, but it also fosters a culture of understanding and empathy within the community. It underscores that mental health, just like physical health, is an integral part of overall well-being and should be prioritized by everyone. Ultimately, these efforts contribute to stronger, healthier individuals, families, and communities. Now, as we think about state examples, in one state, the Coalition of Families actively disseminates materials and resources to support adult mental health and well-being. Their efforts span across the state and include the following: raising awareness about the importance of children's mental health and substance abuse, reducing the stigma associated with mental health, connecting families, educators, and providers with relevant resources, partnering with the Mental Health Association of the state to host the statewide Children's Mental Health Matters campaign during the first week of May. And finally, the campaign aims to increase awareness of children's mental health issues and provide year-round materials and resources for families, schools, and the communities through its website. Now let's hear from you again. It is time for you to share. So please share in the chat information about the available hotlines that are specific to your state, territory, or tribe.
Erica, as people are thinking about what mental health hotlines they have accessible, there was one last comment on listening to community voice. Connecticut shared that they have a parent cabinet, so they again have a place to hold that. So I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss that one.
And Janice talked about we need to promote access to mental health for our educators, and that aligns just what we shared about how the mental health of our caregivers, how it impacts the children. And if we're in a healthy state, the children thrive. So absolutely.
And that having those easy accessible hotlines like Courtney shares 211 and 988 are something that are available to professional caregivers as well as family caregivers.
There's another one from Beatrice 1833 TLC Mama. I'm familiar with that one. Yeah.
You can just hear from the line. And I see a couple more states chiming in with the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, which is a nationally available line for anybody.
And while you continue to share information about hotlines that are specific to your state, territory, or tribe, there's some additional questions that you might want to consider as you implement this specific example activity. So you can think about, given the impact of adult mental health on children's development, how can we leverage our current strengths and opportunities to provide effective resources and supports for adults facing unique challenges and stressors? Another question is, what aspirations do you have for normalizing the need for urgent care and fostering an empathetic community? And finally, what measurable results would you like to see in terms of improved mental health and well-being for both adults and children as a result of these efforts? So again, if a response springs to mind regarding these questions, please don't hesitate to share it in the chat. Now we'll review some resources related to hotlines. We are pleased to present a selection of valuable resources that are designed to support mental health and crisis intervention. The first one is SAMHSA 988 Crisis and Suicide Lifeline. And this is a critical resource providing guidance and information for suicide prevention and mental health crisis services. FindTreatment.gov, treatment locator. It's a private tool for locating mental health and substance use disorder treatment options in the US, offering crisis counseling and referral services. The treatment location has directories for finding healthcare providers that offer methadone treatments for opioid addiction. Strong Hearts Native Helpline. This is a confidential hotline offering support and resources for Native Americans affected by domestic or sexual violence, including peer support, safety planning, and referrals to culturally sensitive service providers. Native Crisis Text Line is an instant text-based support service provided by We Are Native, which connects individuals with crisis counselors by texting Native to 741-741, and it's available 24/7 at no cost. Strong Hearts Native and We Are Native Crisis Text Line are tailored for American Indian, Alaska Native communities. We've added these links to these additional resources in the chat for your convenience. They're also available in the IM on pages 6 and 7, and again on pages 16 and 17. And just another reminder is that they're included in the final slides of this presentation. So now that we've provided a comprehensive overview of the IM structure, features, and content, we will shift gears slightly. Next, we will transition to discussing new mental health initiatives and technical assistance opportunities. Excuse me while I take a sip of water. Thank you. Now, during our May 30th webinar, we discussed Nevada's Early Childhood Community Health Worker Program as a part of our Mental Health Strategies and Action Profile series. Nevada's profile marked the beginning of spotlighting mental health and wellness exemplars. Our second profile features South Carolina's Be Well, Care Well program, which promotes and supports the well-being of early childhood educators so they are better equipped to handle the challenges of their daily work. The profile also highlights South Carolina's continuum of services. You can access both profiles online. The links to both profiles will be put in the chat. Now we're going to review next month's Mental Health Strategies in Action Technical Assistance offering. And excuse me 1 minute. I need just one good call. Trying to cough politely and it just won't come out. So I got that good one in. So thank you for your patience there. All right. Now we're excited to announce our next technical assistance offering, our 1 hour coffee talk session, Mental Health Strategies in Action, Conversations for Change. This upcoming coffee talk session is a one-time event that represents the conclusion of our foundational technical assistance series. The session offers participants a last chance to gain insights into the IM before we transition later in the fall to more hands-on technical assistance activities such as communities of practice and peer-to-peer learning networks. To register for this event, you can scan the QR code or follow the link, which we'll provide in the chat. Just a heads up, please be aware that the interactive nature of this event restricts registration to only 75 participants. To help us identify which strategies we should prioritize in our upcoming coffee talk session, we would love it if you could respond to the poll in the next slide. And so earlier when I showed you the data analytics from our previous webinar, the response was, please focus on strategies 1 through 4, with 3 and 4 being the most favored. But we started with strategy 1 as a precursor to those. So since we've focused on strategy 1, thinking about the remaining strategies under element 1, 2 through 4, which would you like us to dive deeper in for our coffee talk session? So I'll give everyone a second to do the poll. And I do believe we will share the poll results momentarily. And I'm assuming our tech support, Tatiana, you're still tallying those results up for us.
Yes, and our results are slowing down, so another couple of seconds, and then I'm going to end the poll and share the results.
Awesome, thank you. All right, looks like strategy 3 is what we will be prioritizing for our coffee talk session. So this information, again, it's really valuable. We really like to make sure that we are addressing the emergent needs of our audiences. So this is fantastic. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about accessing technical assistance. So in addition to the IM and the mental health strategies and action TA offerings, immediate TA is also available. We encourage you to reach out for assistance. You can scan the QR code or you can access our TA form online. We will share the link in the chat and it's also on the slides in front of you. And in our last few minutes, we just want to thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your commitment to supporting the mental health and well-being of children, families, and the early care and education workforce. As we think about post-webinar application, please share in the chat one step that you will take this week to provide information to families about children's social and emotional development, parental well-being, and the importance of early caregiving relationships. I'll give everyone a moment to do that. And while you're doing that, also just a few reminders. Following this slide, you'll see a complete list of the resource links. Remember to check out the website for the recording and slides, which will be posted in a few weeks. And finally, as you leave the meeting, you'll see a pop-up requesting feedback. Your input is always important. It helps us to plan future content and events. So please take a moment to provide feedback. Thank you again. And again, put in the chat one step that you'll take this week to provide information to families about children's social and emotional development, parental well-being, and the importance of early childhood caregivers. Someone asked if we could put the resources up again. And I'm not sure if they would like the slides or the links, but if we could, yeah, share the slides, that would be fantastic. And Jessica says she's going to look through the links and share them with parents. That's wonderful. Go ahead, Lisa.
I was seeing the same thing and then working with my director to see how we can provide it. So I hear people who are this close to families who have taken a next step away from this. Already, I sent for the posters already. Some action steps were taken right here in the meeting.
Wonderful. I love the weekly newsletters. You're going to provide those to guardians with a few new helpful resources. Oh, wonderful. The Mom's Mental Health Matters and findhelp.org. I'm glad that resonated. It's helpful for you.
Discuss with as a staff and then share the resources with families that kind of all what came up in the poll, how to train our staff. The resources here are already accessible to support staff learning. Wonderful.
Oh, Denise, I love this. She's going to set up a table at local schools in our area as they have back to school nights and provide CDC tip sheets and lists of local resources. That's wonderful.
Love that. Exactly. Bringing together those free resources and
Mm.
national resources with what those local connections. Wonderful.
I see another one with the newsletter, putting resources into your resource file and sharing them bi-weekly. That's fantastic. And Jennifer sharing resources with families and early care and education providers to work with, continue training for staff. That's great. I love that you prioritize your team. That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's a powerful step. Continue to find resources that benefit our community. That's right.
Jessica says parents won't say they need help, so putting information on a bulletin might help them speak up and ask questions. That's so true.
So true. I really appreciated when some folks were sharing their immediate access hotlines. The lines sometimes have names that help us take that action step of seeking out help. When I see a sign that says here to help and listen, I think, okay, maybe I could ask for help.
Can you move to the second resource link slide? So Tatiana, if you're with us, if you could put up that second page there, that would be great. The second page with the resource links.
Gluty shares she didn't have a lot of time to write in the chat because she has a baby up. And I want to reiterate, Erica, what you said. The recording will be available, the resources will be available, and we know good work is happening everywhere.
Well, with 1 minute left, again, we just want to thank you again. It was such wonderful, rich conversation in the chat. And again, please register for our coffee talk session. Again, that'll be a little more informal. And so we'll be able to talk. Everyone will be on video. We're really looking forward to that. Thank you all and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.